So I'm going to start painting the graffiti now, and as you can see we have two large pieces that we need to paint. Everything else is nice and simple. Just remember, when you do graffiti, you usually want to start with the basic outlines of things. Trace it on your car, scale it down, and then you can come back in with all your colors, fill everything in, then paint borders, outlines, and things like that. And that's generally what I do with these cars. So I have it now set up here, kind of in the corner. Go ahead and turn on my light. Of course, make sure that you have it on the right side. In this case, I've made sure that I've aligned everything so we have the end without the break facing us here. And we're going to be working in this corner. Now, thankfully, looking at these numbers, I can get a good idea of where the graffiti starts. And I'm just going to try to kind of keep it scaled down. I used a mechanical pencil, and I just come in here, and I just kind of gauge where the graffiti starts by just kind of drawing a rough outline like this. And you just want to just kind of figure things out, figure out the height and stuff like that first. Get all that figured out, and then everything will come in pretty quick after that. Basically, once you get that first letter scaled down just right, then everything else will kind of fall into place for you. So I'm just painting the P there, like that. And I'm just going to kind of start pulling it down, and then we can move on to the next letter, which is an A, which I'll start here, and I'll work down, back up, over like that, and then back down. While it doesn't look pretty, this will give you a good guideline of where to paint, and then you can just kind of follow behind and add all your different colors in. So for that piece of graffiti, I'm going to be using Rainy Day Gray acrylic, and I paint all of my graffiti with the acrylic. I know some people use enamels, but the problems with enamels is that sometimes they're a bit glossy and they can get kind of chunky. Acrylics can too, but generally I'll try to keep my acrylic layers kind of thin. But I'm just going to go ahead and start painting this, and I'll come back and I'll show you guys what this looks like once it's all done. If you want a more detailed look at the graffiti, I have a video dedicated to graffiti, which is posted a couple of videos back. You guys can look up. But just for the sake of this video, just because this is just basically a walkthrough, I'm just going to go ahead and start painting stuff, and I'll kind of show you the end results with a few little details here and there. Okay guys, here we are, fast forwarding a little bit. It's coming along pretty good. Giving you guys a little look at the graffiti there. It's definitely not perfect, but it looks pretty good, and it'll look even better once we get the other piece in there. But this is the first one. So I started at 12 o'clock today, and just finished this up. So in total it took me about 2 hours to just kind of fine-tune everything, clean everything up. I went to work, came back, and finished up some fine detail on it. But overall it looked pretty good. There's some small tag work that we'll do in the corner here in a little bit. But if we compare it to the prototype photos, I think it's pretty damn close. Let me get this light off so we can see it better. That's not really... Yeah, come on. There we go. Now you can see it. There it is. It should be a little bit more forward over that number. I had to compromise a little bit. When I started painting it, I realized it was just shifted over a little bit, but still looks okay. So it'll work fine. And of course we'll have to weather it up because you can see all the salt and rust is starting to grime over it, but that'll come later. So this is the next one that I'm going to do. But for now, I'm going to take a break for tonight, and I'll come back tomorrow and I'll start painting the second piece of graffiti on the side of this car. And that'll wrap up the graffiti for the most part. Okay, it's now day 3, Saturday, and I'm going to start working on this piece of graffiti now. And as we move over to the car, I've already traced it all out, so it's going to be the same process. This one's got a lot more color to it than this one, but it should take about the same amount of time. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it in. So in this case, I'm going to start with the green, and then I'm going to do the pink, then white highlights, black outline, white highlighting, and then some yellow highlighting. And then we'll be able to come back and finish up the tagging. So let me go ahead and paint that, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. Hey guys, well now it's Sunday, and we're 3 days into this project, and I have the graffiti done. Look at this. Pretty nice, huh? So I got the first one done there, and then the second one is all finished up too. I'd have to say this one was a lot harder than the first because there was a lot more colors to do, and because they're lighter shades, they usually take a lot more coats to actually cover up. I had to custom mix some colors as well, and had to do a lot of touch-up with this too because there were so many fine lines. But it turned out pretty good. It's slightly compressed and it's a little farther over than it should be, but if you look at the prototype above, it's pretty good replication, I'd say. So it works pretty well. The only other thing we really got to add to the side in terms of graffiti is this little bit of scribble here in the corner, and some other little things I'll add in detail. And then I got to decide if I want to put any like extra graffiti on the opposite side, but probably not, just so I have one clean side that demonstrates just the weathering. This side is for the interest of the graffiti, because obviously also the prototype has graffiti anyway. But anyways, it's all done now and I'm pretty happy with it. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is working on the hatch, and we'll get this reinstalled tonight. Basically what we need to do, sorry about that, there we go, there's the hatch. These little lock bars and hinges are rested over. The hatch itself is pretty clean. Now this was dull coated with the model, so it's pretty much prepped and ready to go. All I'm going to do is take some acrylic paint, in this case some earth brown, and I'm going to hand paint each one of these individual little hinges and each bolt until I get those painted. Once I get that done, I'll reinstall this on the car. So let's go ahead and jump ahead and I'll show you what this all looks like once this is done. But this is all just easy brush painting, so I'll just kind of skip over it. Hatch is back on now. Here you can see how I've painted these lock bars, so they have that nice rusty tone to them, which is pretty cool. Matches the prototype. So now what I'm going to do is actually start working on the underbody and putting a little bit more detail on it. The first thing I want to do is do the kick-up spray. And in this case, sometimes I'll paint it, but in this case I'm actually going to use some chalk powder. And I'm actually going to use a little bit of black because in the photos the kick-up spray lines are very pronounced. So what I'm going to do, well, if I get my, I guess cap would help. There we go. Usually I'll just take the powder like this and I'll gather it up in the lid, and I'll just use a small applicator brush like this, something thin and small, knock off most of the powder, and then I'll just kind of try to match up a quick line just like that to get an idea of where the wheel span is. Then you can come in, you can start applying that spray line, the distinctive spray line. And all these cars have this, especially after they've been in a couple years of service. They all get these kick-up spray patterns from the wheel spraying up the grease, the oil, and everything else. So I'm going to do that on both ends. I'm not going to do too much other crazy stuff other than the spray pattern that I'll do, and I'll demonstrate that next here. So this technique here is something I really like to do, and I demonstrate it on all my tank cars, and a lot of my hoppers have this too. Again, because it's just pronounced on these underbays, and sometimes on the covered hoppers that have the open end cages, for example, like the 4750s again. What I like to do is take a large stiff bristle brush like this, take a little bit of earth brown, maybe some dark acrylic, something like that. Maybe I'll mix the two colors together, and I'll make a very thin wash with my mixing bowl, which is in the corner here, and I'll make a wash in my brush. That way I can take it, and I will generally take the bristles of the brush like this and just kind of let that paint splatter like this, and that gives you this really realistic looking kick-up spray pattern. So when you look at this, it looks just like what's on the prototype cars, where all of that will generally spray up, and you'll get those spray fanning patterns there basically. So I'm going to repeat this on both ends like this, and I'm also going to come back behind and hit it up with some white. And now here is the same pattern done with the white paint to give you the fresh mud splatter. And again, this is something I do on all my locomotives, all my rail cars in general. And there you can really see that cool variety of the different colors, and that's exactly what kick-up spray is. It's a variety of different colors, creating that specific effect really. So just repeat this both ends. And again, usually with mud, just kind of look at the prototype, see how bad it is. Some cars have less, some cars have more. Same thing with locomotives. You just kind of figure out how much you want to put on there. And generally, maybe like 2 or 3 good splatters per bay. Something like that is usually pretty good. And again, you get this really awesome looking effect that we've created now. Moving along now, what I also want to work on is painting a couple of these roof walks to look like they've been replaced. On the prototype car, these 3 panels here have been replaced on the car, and I'm going to try to replicate that here. So I got 1, 2, 3 to paint. And in this case I'm going to use a little bit of Tester Silver. I'm going to pick a little bit up in my brush, and it's just going to be a simple matter of going in and then just trying to carefully line it up like this. And you got to be careful because paint like this has a tendency to get kind of chunky as you're painting it. So you just need to be kind of cautious with it and just kind of work slowly and carefully to get everything coated. Like this. And I'm just going to hit the side and then also underneath to make sure it is all painted silver as well. I don't want to make it look like only one part is painted and the other half is weathered, because then it just looks sloppy. Alright, so as you can see, I've gotten these panels painted to make them look like they were replaced, and it's a pretty cool little effect. And kind of in conclusion of this car weathering, what I want to start doing is the load spillage. And with the salt spillage, usually it leads it around the hatches, and it'll streak down the side of the car. A lot of these bulk products usually do. And there's a couple ways you can replicate this. You can use acrylic paint, or you can use oil paint. And in this case, I'm choosing the oil paint route because the oils are easier to blend and stretch to what you want them to be. And in this case, I'm going to be using some Winsor & Newton Titanium White water mixable oil. And I have taken a little bit and I've applied it over on my mixing paper out of the camera here in the corner. And I'm going to be using a roughened up liner brush to apply this. Basically what I do is I pick up the paint just a little bit at a time. I will dip my brush in a little bit of thinner to stretch it. And I'm just going to start kind of applying this. And this is just the first application. We'll go back and smooth everything out. Remember that these are going to usually run down, or they're going to pull up a little bit as it sits on top of the car and rainwater collects in it. It'll usually pull up and create these cool little wavy patterns. So what I'm basically doing here is just modeling this first by taking the brush and stretching out the oil paint like this. And again, with these oils you can work them pretty well. I'm just going to kind of try to tuck it underneath that hatch too a little bit and work it down like this. On the ends it's going to be a little bit lighter, and then as we get it stretched out here, what I'm going to do, start coming back. I'm going to start pulling it down and away from the hatch just like this. It's a very simple technique. It just starts pulling all that paint down, makes it look like it's following the rain traveling down the side of the car, and you get this really cool little pattern where you can actually see how it's starting to run. So if we zoom in on that, you can kind of see what I'm creating here. Now on the opposite side, I'm making it look like it's a little bit more of a heavier spillage. You can see that difference. And this is only the first layer too. I'll probably do a second layer over this to kind of even it out a little bit. Basically the next step here will be to start streaking it down the side portion of the car. And again, what you want to do is switch up to a brush similar to what we used to apply the oils underneath the roof walk. And I'm just going to basically take this larger brush, pick up a little bit of my thinner, and I'm going to try to take as much of that out as I can. I want this to be kind of a dry wash, and I'm just going to basically start applying this under the roof walk like this, and I'm just going to stretch it down. Again, remember when doing stuff like this, work in small sections at a time. Don't get too crazy too quick. Just work in small little portions at a time. And we're not trying to pull all this down the side of the car yet. We're just working on the top here, so don't get too aggressive with it. Once you get the paint settled in, then you can go in and start streaking it down like this. Now, because I varied the paint and stretched it out quite a bit, there's a variation in how thick this salt spillage is. You can see as we're going down farther, it starts to thin out, and in some areas I'm leaving it a little bit heavier. But it's basically the same technique all the way down the roof walk. And again, this is a technique that you can build up. This is going to need to continually get smoothed out, but it's a good way to model that salt streaking or even some grain spillage. So now we can streak this paint down, and again I'm just going to do random little sections at a time. What I'm going to do is stretch this paint out just like this, and I'm going to work it down. Now, I also should mention that before I did this, I gave my graffiti and the other layer of weathering another coat of dull coat, and this is just an additional layer of protection to make sure that I'm not scraping up any of this nice graffiti work or anything like that. I want to make sure all that's clean. But really what I'm doing here is just adding various little highlights of this load spillage to the areas where the graffiti is. And this will not only blend the graffiti in a little bit more and make it look a little bit more natural, because right now it really stands out on the side of the car. It'll blend it in a little bit, give it a little bit extra weathering, and it'll make it look a little bit more realistic here. So you can see it already is starting to kind of blend in a little bit more. So again, guys, don't be afraid to weather your graffiti a little bit. I know sometimes it can be a little bit concerning to go over it, but once you do this enough times and you know how to treat graffiti, you can weather it up quite a bit and it looks a lot more realistic. It always is a great way to enhance things. But basically, you're just working down the side of the car. And again, you can kind of vary it. You can give some areas a heavier streak of this load spillage. You can do lighter. Really, it just is up to you, but again, I'm just kind of going off of what the prototype looks like, and there is quite a bit of significant streaking consistently on this car, so its load really does spill quite a bit apparently, or else they're just really sloppy when loading these things, which with salt, usually the contents is pretty messy and it spills all over anyway. But I'm just going to go down, and I'm going to continually work it there. But you can see it really does not take that much effort to do that, and you can get some really good effects with this. It looks really nice. Since I got the oil out, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of a dusting on these trucks too, just to make them look like they got a little bit of that salt dust on them. And this is a cool little another basic enhancement you can do. I'll just do this in all the trucks, since I had the paint out anyway. Just add these little streaks. Just like this. A little bit of discoloration gives a little bit more flavor. There we go. Starting to transition nicely. I'm not going to be doing too much else to these wheels, by the way. I'm going to skip over the powder application because I have enough videos showing how I weather these trucks. But basically from this point on, what I'll be doing, I'll go in and I'll highlight a few little details, certain areas like end cages, couplers, wheels, wheel faces, things like that with some powders. Generally I'll use AIM products or Monroe Models powders. Lots of dark earth tones, maybe some fresh rust, light rust, a little bit of dust here and there, just to enhance things a little bit more. But again, that's kind of an optional thing. If you don't want to go that far, you don't have to. Generally, a lot of paint treatment on your wheels will be good enough, but I like to go in extra detail and add a lot of that powdery elements to my weathering, so I'll be going back and adding powders to this, but for the most part, this car is pretty much concluded. So in the next clip we'll be going back and we'll be looking at everything that we've accomplished with this model. Alright guys, well we fast forward ahead now and the car is done. And she's looking real nice. Really what I did off camera was I just applied some powders to the trucks, to the wheels, the wheel faces. I put a little bit in the end cage area. And I just kind of highlighted some little details here and there, but as we're seeing here, this is the graffiti side of the car again. You'll notice I did put the safety tape in the prototypical location. I just followed it where it was on the prototype, installed that. And I really like the graffiti on this one. I think it all came out real well. That was the most time-consuming part, but the salt streaking, the faded logos, the patchwork, all of that is really a great combination of items because it really enhances the look of this car. And there's a lot of cool little elements to look at. And weathered up, they all look real nice, but if we look at the top, I really like that roof walk with the rusty panels and then the replaced ones. The hatch looks really cool, and then you got all that washout with the salt as it dissolves and runs down the side of the car. It's a cool little effect. Again, looking at the opposite side here, I don't want to handle it too much, but here's the opposite side, and I can't really say which one is my favorite side. I really like this one too because it highlights more of that salt streaking. You can see the individual bands, some of the more heavy runs and things like that. Really looks cool. And again, this was a pretty simple project from start to finish. It took me, where are we at? We're at 4 days now to get this done, but it was definitely worth filming, and I hope you guys liked this project. I'll definitely have some more covered hoppers coming. I got some other various rolling stocks and other things that I'll be weathering up. I think I'll be doing one of those NARC 3-bay potash hoppers pretty soon, because those get really rusty used in aggregate service. They haul limestone, I believe, and I think some of them might haul salt too, but I'm going to be wiring some of those up, so you guys can keep an eye out for a video on one of those. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Subscribe here on YouTube for more content. Follow my work on Facebook and Instagram. The Facebook page is Dan's Custom Trains. Daniel Arnold is my name. You guys can look me up on there. And on Instagram, my tag is Dan E. Dankinson, and it is all lowercase, so you guys again can look me up and follow me there. If you have any questions about this project, just shoot me a comment, something like that. I'll do my best to try to get back to you on it. But for now, that'll wrap it up. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take it easy.